Hello everyone. Apologies to viewers for the few minutes delay. We've been 8 minutes waiting, but we had to have all the guests here. We're still missing one guest, but we'll start. They will join us very shortly. Thank you very much for your patience. Please accept our apologies again. We're just about to start now. Welcome everyone. And without further ado, we'll just start with introductions, and I'm just simply going to start from my right and then go around in the circle in the order of your appearance. So we're going to start with Emmanuel Kondok. Emmanuel Kondok lives in Australia, and he will also introduce himself in a minute, personally, as an individual, to tell you more about himself. Followed by Lem Baguoot, also is one of our people who lives in Australia. Jok Madut Jok lives in the United States and teaches at the university there. Thabo Arop lives here in London with us, part of a very established South Sudanese community in London. And David Mabor lives in Australia, and he's one of our colleagues here at RBC, one of the key founders, in fact, the founder of RBC. So this is a great panel. We are still waiting for our friend Nyadol Nyadol Nyuon, but she should be able to join us in about 10 minutes. So let's start with individual introductions. Emmanuel, please, could you tell us more about yourself?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mawan, and the RBC TV for organizing this session this morning or evening or afternoon, elsewhere of the world. I'm Emmanuel Kondok, and I live here in Australia, especially in New South Wales and South Sudanese. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Mawan, and everyone that has joined us this morning or this evening, wherever we live. My name is Lem Baguoot. I lived in South Sudan, living in Melbourne, Australia. Well, I live in a regional country now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lem. Sahatini, we are making introductions. I'm sorry, I think you exited, and I didn't see you waiting there for us. So I hope it wasn't very frustrating. Can you hear me, Sahatini?
I can hear you clearly, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome, Sahatini. We are doing quick introductions, so please brief words about yourself for our audience.
Oh, thank you, Mawan and RBC, for having me along with the panel today. So my name is Sahatini Bilal. I'm an ex-civil servant, former deputy director for urban planning for West Victoria State. Currently a housing specialist for finance reconciliation based in London, and also an advocate of civic republicanism for South Sudan in a nutshell. But I'm sure we'll get to unpack that later on this evening. Thank you.
Brilliant. You're welcome, Sahatini. Jok Madut Jok, please tell us a bit more about yourself.
Yes, thank you, Mawan and David Mabor, for organizing this, and thanks to my co-panelists. This is a great day indeed to see so many faces. I'm Jok Madut Jok. I am currently living in the United States, teaching at Syracuse University. I'm trained as an anthropologist. So I write on political violence, on health and gender in context of war. I am also a former civil servant. I was undersecretary in the Ministry of Culture and Heritage, late 2010 to just before 2013. And in that role, I learned a lot about South Sudan. I'm also a kind of activist scholar, so you will hear me a lot of times being very critical on the government, but being constructive at the same time. It's not an all-out war. It's an effort for us to get ourselves onto the same page. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thabo.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much, Mr. Mawan, for inviting me to come here to RBC television. My name is Thabo Arop, and I live, as Mawan said before, I live in United Kingdom. And I am currently a managing director of Arop Ayik Educational. It's a non-profit organization. My background is in science, and as well I studied biochemistry in Alexandria. And then when I came here, I actually, I kind of changed direction, and I'm professionally now an early years professional. And I've actually studied up to, I've actually graduated from South Bank University, and I obtained BA in education. So yeah, so this is, yeah. So
welcome, Thabo. I'm sure
Thank
we're going to have a very interesting discussion today. David, David, a little bit about yourself for our audience. I'm just unmuting you there.
Thank you, Mawan. I'm David Mabor Chadar. I live in Australia, in Adelaide. I've been here for about 4 years in Adelaide, but I've been in Australia for many years, over 20 years. And I am one of the founders of the RBC TV. Yeah. That's all
Welcome. Welcome very much, David. Without further ado, we continue. We go to our first question. We have set questions, giving everybody the same chance to try to answer a question in about 2 to 3 minutes, because time is not with us. Leave a bit more behind because you'll have a chance to say it again in your closing remarks. So our first question is this. Is starting with Emmanuel Kondok, and everybody else will answer the same question. And the question is, what is your evaluation of the impact of the Pcca on the South Sudanese political landscape? How do you see that impact? How do you evaluate the impact on the South Sudanese political scene? And I think I'm going to interrupt you there because Nyadol has joined us.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all fine.
So we're going to get her to introduce herself. I mean,
it's fine.
Oh, Nyadol, can you hear us?
Hello, Nyadol.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Oh, welcome, Nyadol. We've made brief introductions, and I think you've come at a very good time. So everybody has introduced themselves. I just mentioned the people's names, and they briefly told us about themselves. Could you tell the audience a little bit more about yourself, Nyadol Nyuon?
Yes, I'm a lawyer, and I write a little bit, and I do some advocacy in Australia around issues of human rights, asylum seekers, and multiculturalism. So I think probably those are the general terms of describing myself.
Yes, of course. I mean, almost every one of us, among us here, have heard about you, and have seen you appear in the media with all the brilliant work and the profile that you've raised, our profile, the profile of South Sudanese that you've raised in Australia in a very, very positive manner. So you're welcome. We're very proud to have you here with us today on the panel.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Before we go ahead, I forgot actually to introduce myself.
Mawan, I'm going to check James. James is struggling to get in, so I'm going to mute myself and yeah. And hello, Nyadol.
Okay, I'm Mawan Muortat. I live in the UK. I trained many years ago. I studied with Thabo, actually, go back many years back in Alexandria. I studied agriculture there. But after coming to the UK, I spent a couple of years to do further studies in agriculture. And agriculture could not earn me bread and butter in the UK in the 1980s. So I switched to IT, and I was very lucky to get into the industry and spend a few years there, about 2 decades. But nowadays, I spend most of my time on South Sudanese issues. As you well know, we can actually leave our country physically, but our country never leaves our hearts. So that's me quickly. But we were about to hear from Emmanuel Kondok, his first response to the first responder to our first question, which I'm going to read again. We have set questions, 3 questions. We'll all go through them. Each person will answer them as briefly as they can, maybe 3 minutes or something like that, because time is against us. So the question is, what is your evaluation of the impact of the Pcca on the South Sudanese political landscape? Emmanuel.
Thank you, everyone, and especially Mawan and the founders of the RBC TV and my panelists on this morning. I would say morning in Australia and evening, maybe UK and other part of the world. So the personal evaluations of the or impact on Pcca on South Sudanese political landscape. On my personal opinion, this is not a collective opinion, but it's a personal opinion and evaluation at the same time. Is Pcca hit the ground on a very wrong time at the same time. Why they came in at the time when South Sudanese hit or has been overwhelmed by a number of things, and especially the political space of the South Sudan. So really, they have not hit the space or hit the ground on a very normal or normalcy situation, but they came in at the wrong time, and at the same time came in with a lot of destruction. And guess what? For one of the example of South Sudanese political space, like the one in 2013, when there was that brink of conflict in Juba, our people, our politicians, our activists, instead of taking time, study the situation, see how the situation is, the current space, the current political arena now, they come in and they also destruct the small harmonies and social coexistence that the Southern Sudanese has. Why? Because people came out of the 2013 peace agreement, and it was a 1 year from the last year when all the other political parties and warring parties came together and tried to build that peace. So they created another, or some of our members created another loophole in the South Sudanese political space. Already, socially, politically, this one is costing a lot now. I'm talking to you. An example, Mr. Kwel Agwar, the former governor of Will, is now in jail because of this. Why can't we give a space, work together with current things, with a small piece we have? I call it small piece because we have not got a tangible piece really in the space, and try to support, build together so we can be able to have that proper structure and the country come together. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Emmanuel. Lem, briefly, how do you respond to that question? If you want me, please, if anyone wants me to repeat the question, please don't hesitate to ask. Are you happy to proceed with answering, or do you want me to read the question again, Lem?
No, thank you so much, Brother Mawan. I thought first we better hear first from Professor Jok to brief us first on the latest, because for us to, this is a continuous and it is a continuum state of affairs in the country. So for any of us to make a well-informed commentary, we need to briefly know, because the last time that we had a check on this was on the 30th, and briefly it dies off. But of course, I will give my opinion a while later. Because,
no, by the way, I've sent you updates, because the Pcca continued to produce updates. So I've sent you quite a few updates since that time. So I hope you've had a chance to have a look.
Okay, I will definitely. Well, let me briefly say what I thought of Pcca and what it has initiated. This has initiated now a great platform of which people can speak to the issues that are affecting us as a country and as a people. I will speak on my own behalf as an individual and as somebody who was one time part of the revolutionary struggle. There is why this is necessary at the moment, why this kind of talks is necessary. This did not just come out of nowhere or out of blue. Uh, we had national dialogue, which was a precursor to this. And prior to that, we had the events of going back to SPLM Second National Convention in 2008, of which this actually was initiated, this kind of talk, that the nation is going astray. The revolution has lost its ideals. Because as a people, we did not just wake up overnight and then think there is need for change. Our people are, this talk has always been continuous. And then come the events of 2013. We even saw the wrangling on the day, the eve of raising, hosting of our flag. There was already this kind of attack of war. Why? Because the ideals that people were trying, what we wanted, wasn't there. Then came the national dialogue less than 3 months ago. And this initiated this. So the Pcca did not even say something different, which was anybody. Not even the leaders of the SPLM as a political party, they have always been saying this, echoing it loud anywhere. But what we are saying, it is a tendency, a country that is completely drained. And our leaders, I have written sometimes on why I think the current level of the people that we are seeing in the country do not in any way, we might say like what my brother said earlier on, there's peace. What we are seeing is not peace. It is a buying of time, and it is going to again, it initiates another violence. And we are already at this. But why not giving room for people to have this kind of thought? My own critiques of and criticism of Pcca, it is that it is right, and of course something has to always start somewhere. However, we also need to take out personality cult, which defines SPLM, SPLA as a movement. Even during our days, individuals become more important than the organizations. And once a nation is started like that, then you eventually are looking at the people who got no any destiny. And this is why what we are seeing, it is what we are seeing. And when you say uh, the leadership in the country is wrong, is leading a nation into truly into what we could call into hell, nobody can really, you would be seen as somebody against this. But if there's no pride, every South Sudanese, the death of an individual is not important, or the displacement of massive millions and millions of our people out of the country is not important. So for somebody to say what Pcca is saying is rubbish, perhaps maybe that person is so removed from reality of what we are saying as a people. But my problem with it is as well, if it is again coming, if it is not the initiatives of our people, then this is where the real problem is. But if this is a movement by our people and it is for them, then let it be open and let it be discussed and let our people have a take in it and openly be allowed to do that. But we know the state we have created. It is a state created by mafias and cartels. Let me honestly say it in this state. And these
Thank you,
people are
Lem.
determined, regardless. This is why sometimes you need to be wise and clever. The approach taken by Pcca was suicidal because you cannot approach something so dangerous, something of this kind, without mobilizing, without taking your time, and to truly see, is this feasible? Why would you do something that you know you cannot achieve? Not even, of course, you cannot achieve it in one day, but at least mobilize take your people with you, get everybody involved. This is not an elite program again, and this is what I don't like. Because when an organization stands that it is only led by elites, or it become more an elite program.
Thank you, Lem. Thank you, Lem. We need to wrap up, but it's good.
Yeah.
Your message is very clear. Thank you very much. We'll come to the next questions as well to elaborate. Nyadol, could you come in now to respond to the question? But if you want me to repeat it, I'm more than happy to repeat the question.
I think I recall aspect of the questions. I'll probably start by saying, I think we should commend anybody, particularly in the current political space in South Sudan, who is interested and still willing to take a risk to discuss issues that normally I think the sentiment is that people keep quiet and tag along. So the first is really to commend the people that came up with this idea. We know that the response from the security forces in South Sudan is not generally reasonable. So I think it can be easy for us to criticize and pick apart what as Pcca might have failed. But the initiative itself should be commended, and particularly the fact that it was one that intended to in effect change through a peaceful means. My comments generally are observations, because I have to be honest in that out of just my own, I suppose, mental health, I have detached myself significantly from South Sudanese politics over the last 2 to 3 years. I think for me, 2013 was such a traumatizing event in the way in which I saw just the amount of hate speech towards each other, the amount of hate and anger from all quarters, from very surprising quarters sometimes. It just made the political space in South Sudan very hard to engage in respectfully and civilly. Especially, I also think if you're a woman, I think there's also quite a bit of, if you are a woman and you speak up, there's a lot of sexist attacks and abuse directed at you. So I think for sometimes I stepped away from it, but it doesn't mean, as you mentioned before, all of us to some ways find it very hard to detach entirely from the South Sudanese issues that are going on. The South Sudan issues that are going on. So going back to the question again, I think the challenge in South Sudan is that we still have a government that is still very militaristic in its response. I don't think there's been a mental shift yet from the people that lead the SPLA, that they're no longer in the bush, and that now they have to run a civilian administration. And this has absolutely separate requirements to running a guerrilla movement. And until that transition occur, I think the political space for South Sudan will always be very difficult, because the idea in a military sense is that there is a command system that is followed, but in a civilian sense, you see yourself as a servant of the people. And I think that it's no longer the case, practically at least, when you see it in South Sudan, that be the case. The other thing I would say is that I think that the SPLA itself, and this seems rather very blasphemous for someone like me to say, considering my own further contributions to it, I think the SPLA itself should be retired. I think it's time to put the SPLA in a museum and the SPLM in a museum. And I think that's the reason why that's important, is because it has become in itself.
Nyadol, when you say the SPLA, you mean the SPLA and the SPLM?
I mean the SPLM, the political wing of it. I understand the division between the military and the political wing. I think it's time to retire it. And this is why I think it's time to retire it. And when I say retire it, I'm not saying we should not speak about it publicly. It's something that should be celebrated, should be in our museum, should be in our history books. But I think if we can take away the title of the SPLM from individuals, then they are forced not only to tell us about what they did in the past, they have to tell us what they're going to do in the future, so that people are not just electing them because of what they did in the past. They're electing them because they've created a livable, visible, peaceful future for South Sudan. And I think that when people can still carry the SPLA mantle, a lot of us vote out of the emotion and the attachment of what the SPLA did, despite the fact that their current track record, which suggests what their future record will be, it's not good. Now, having said that, it is not to discredit the people that were involved in the movement, but it's very hard for anybody to step down from power. In the history of African revolution, I think there's only two people who did so, with Nelson Mandela and Mwalimu Julius Nyerere in Tanzania. So it's a very rare occurrence for people to know when their sun is set and it's time for them to step away. And I don't see the current leadership in South Sudan stepping away anytime soon. So in summary, I commend the attempt by the Pcca, and I think that their attempt actually is able to expand our idea of what is politically acceptable discourse in South Sudan. I commend their courage to be able to take on this initiative in what is sometimes a politically hostile environment. And then in terms of what can actually cause change, I think my comments of the systematic change that need to occur in terms of the transition from SPLA, from a military to a more civilian approach leadership, and also the very idea that maybe it's time to retire the idea of SPLM as a political party.
Thank you so much, Nyadol. That's really a brilliant input. Sahatini.
Thank you, Mawan, and thank you for Sister Nyadol and Lam specifically, because I think some of the points that they have raised so far really resonate with me very deep. But before I go on, I just wanted to sort of clarify two things. One thing that I forgot to mention earlier, and it was just out of a sort of mental block more than anything. Addition to my current profession, I'm also the editor-in-chief of the Azande Live talk show, which basically more or less runs a similar service to yours, however more culturally centered. As of the recent 12 months, we have integrated political discourse in our public debates. And personally, what my input has been is to promote a sense of civic republicanism, whereby such issues as PCCAs and other things can also be debated and discussed transparently and engaging across section of society. Now, specifically with what has been shared so far, I'm going to be very careful to leave my assessments of the flaws and other things probably to later questions, but specifically as to the evaluation of the impact that the coalition has had so far. Well, first of all, it has stimulated debate and discussion on politics from a very different angle in South Sudan, from an angle which is non-partisan, which I think is a breath of fresh air, which is really interesting. And even though there seems to be some, I don't know if you can say indications or characteristics that it might be displaying elitist or even almost partisan components in and of itself, I still think that the attempt, especially considering the context, in retrospection of 10 years of independence, in the context of everything that's been happening, is still commendable. And of course, the coalition has not come from heaven. They will be imperfect, and there will be a lot of work to do to really make the most of it. And whether or not, one other thing is whether or not the coalition is a threat or an opportunity for change. One thing is clear is that they are a serious organization. They do seem to have a method, even though we can still debate about that. But they seem to be striking the right chords with many people. And that might also sort of delve into the following questions, but they are trying their best to break down tribal boundaries, regional boundaries, and we can hear from different parts of South Sudan some solidarity to that process. Also, sometimes we have to take a step back and go back to the very basics. We are a republic. We are a commonwealth, and that entails some principles which are non-negotiable. First of which is every citizen has the right to intervene in public debate. And it is debate. In the end, you are able to challenge the other and provide alternative ideas. The coalition, as we're talking now, we're disagreeing with some aspects of their methods or their agenda, and we are agreeing with others. And we should, so that we can get the best for our people. The coalition itself should not become an idol, just like the SPLM or any party, NCP or Republicans or Democrats, should not become an idol around which the nation gathers around, but should be an idea that is challenged, not for the sake of just challenging, but for the sake of making our nation better, more competitive. We are recovering from 7 years of civil war. Our infrastructure, our economy is completely collapsed. So I think that whether it is the coalition or any other movement, this type of paradigm shift is inevitable. As the sister Nyadol said quite eloquently earlier, and if I can sort of make an analogy, the mindset and the paradigm of liberation struggle was necessary according to a particular context. This is akin to if your house is on fire and you have the leader of the household, you want him to be commanding to take the children out. There's no discussion, there's no debate. You take them out, put them into safety. You clear as much as you can. That itself is liberation or salvation. This is a paradigm addressing a particular problem. Now that this problem has been resolved, you cannot possibly perceive the leader of the household to maintain that mindset in a paradigm for reconstruction. It just doesn't make any sense. The process by which we can engage the leader of the household and other constituents, other members and partners, even outside of South Sudan, that can be debated, that can be discussed, that should be encouraged, that should be out there. If we don't talk, we are never going to go forward. And so it's risk-taking for those, especially those who are in South Sudan. We have to commend that. And at the same time, just as anybody else, they will be held accountable for what they commit themselves to do, and how genuine the aspirations for peace, unity, security, and economic revival is going to be pursued. So in a nutshell, this is my evaluation so far, and I'm sure we'll get some time to discuss about the particular flows and how it has impacted, bringing people together or not. Thanks again, Mawan.
Thank you so much, Sahatini.
Definitely hope I can answer more questions.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Fantastic. Professor Jok.
Yes, thank you all. I definitely appreciate what has been said so far. I will speak, my answer will be twofold. The first one is why I think Pcca happened, and why...
Briefly, if you can.
Yes, why it was timely. And so Pcca could not have come at a better time in the history of this country. It came at a moment when we are seeing that even the peace agreement that Emmanuel was talking about, it's been 3 years of it, and nothing has happened. Nothing whatsoever. Perhaps, okay, you might say the guns have silenced a little bit, but only for the elite who have signed have the guns gone silent. But for the majority of our people, death is still happening everywhere, every day. So waiting on this peace agreement was definitely not something that is going to relieve South Sudan. So Pcca has come at a moment when it said we are approaching our stability, our country, the Commonwealth, as was described. is the wrong way. The first thing that we should be doing is to be in dialogue with our people, which they try to do through the national dialogue, and the resolution of national dialogue were akin to start of the road to solving and settling South Sudan. The threats of a return to war are all over the world. Whether it will be the elections, which are said will happen in another year, but which we think will not happen. The Pcca came at the right moment to say that let us not hang all our hopes on this peace agreement and on these elections that are set to come, because we know they will not happen. Everything that was supposed to be done in preparation for that election, not even 1% of it has been accomplished. Be that security arrangement, be that a census, or even repatriation of millions of our people. Nothing that can show that these elections is going to happen. And even if it happens, South Sudan is set up in such a way that the elections themselves will become the next trigger for the next round of war. As SPLM, as Nyadol eloquently put it, SPLM has become owned and reflected in the bodies of some people, such that if they lose office, then they go to war over it. So I think Pcca has come at the best moment. Any political dispensation could have come. What has happened since the declaration of the People's Coalition for Civil Action? What has happened is that it's diverse. Unlike any other movement you can see currently, well, except for the SPLM, but SPLM is only it's only a skeleton of what it used to be when it was liberating the country. But right now, it is no longer a political party that anybody can trust to steer this country in the right direction. It's also articulate. It brought such a breath of fresh air in the way you articulate the problems that are confronting the country. Even the people who have held office for 16 years, the SPLM has been in office 16 full years, and nothing, not anything other than the independence of South Sudan, anyone can point to today that they can show for 16 years of being in office. They are also very brave. They have spoken in the midst of a very vicious, bloodthirsty regime. And Kwelagwer is in jail because of that, which in itself is an indictment against the government of South Sudan, because you can't hold a sick person without charges and without trial. Somebody who has not killed anyone, somebody who has not taken up arms against anyone, somebody who said, I am only here to speak. I'm only here to talk about what is ailing our country. And until we begin to talk, the government and the citizens, nothing is going to happen. So I think this is the reason, this is what we can say the Pcca has brought on the political landscape of South Sudan, introducing the idea that people who are talking are less likely to fight. It's a simple fact. If we are talking with each other, most likely we will not go back to war. But why does the government hate the idea of a dialogue, the idea of people sitting down to tell each other that so-and-so is wrong and so-and-so is right? What is such a crime in doing that? And I think Pcca and many other coalitions like it, like the Red Kite movement, like the United Citizens for Change, and 12 other coalitions that are building underground. The more the government refuses to talk, the more explosion this will happen in this country. And I think Pcca is the voice of reason in all of that, in the sense that it's a non-violent movement. They said that they will refuse to be provoked into violence. Even if the government attacks them, they will fold their hands and be smashed by tanks. It's better that way than another group arming themselves and go into the bush and kill more South Sudanese. There will be no point in that. So talking is the only way. I think this is something that is new that Pcca has introduced to our country. Thank you.
Sorry, Thabo, we've been waiting seriously, patiently. Thank you so much, Jok. I know I was muted. Yeah, it's your chance to answer the question, Thabo.
Thank you very much, Mawan. Kind of looking at the question, what came to my mind is more to do with because as far as I've kind of said the Pcca, because they actually came out of nowhere. So I kind of felt like with the political kind of like landscape, I can't say exactly the impact they have done. I can't say for sure, but from my personal kind of like view, I kind of felt it's the way the government reacted, I think kind of gave them credibility, because they are, here we go, it's kind of like a group, they have no army at all, no party, just kind of starting, and at the end of that is, so I don't know, so I was wondering, is it maybe because they have kind of plan, and that plan they have like A to B and C to Z, and is it that because they had a plan, that's why the government kind of felt threatened? Because I think it's only because of their reaction, because they overreacted, I kind of felt that's actually what gave them the importance. And because of that, I think maybe other people kind of like, maybe they took notice as well. And at the same time, because it wasn't just kind of like just coming out and then saying we are this and this, but to kind of like dare the government and say, well, we would like, people to go out on this day and kind of like say the date on this day to do this. So I think maybe they kind of felt it was daring for them actually to do that. So I think, as other people said before, I definitely felt like they were courageous in what they did, because as all we are in South Sudan, freedom of speech, it should be, something anybody can say. And as long as you're not using the arm or anything, you haven't got arms or violence, it should be appropriate for people to kind of like to engage in kind of like discussion. It doesn't matter whether you agree with the governor or not, but it should be the best way, even with the peace talk they talk about. Because how are you going to kind of achieve any peace if you're not going to listen to each other, or you're not going to kind of like address the problem that you already have about in the country? Because now it's been 10 years has gone, and as everybody knows, everybody mentioned, there's so many things that hasn't scratched the surface, really. Like, we haven't moved from where we were, like say 10 years ago, and it's opposite. So many things have actually kind of like deteriorating, really, whether it's education, whether it's roads, even just kind of like finding food and things like that. Just the simple thing, just having a salary. Imagine like here, if you're in Great Britain, and say by the end of the month, and if you haven't got your salary that day and the next day, definitely they will ask for the government to resign, because it's kind of like one of the things that, it should be your right to have this and to have that. But if you haven't got even the right to speak up about what you think there's a problem. So how are we going to move on? I can't say it. But definitely in South Sudan, because of course I live here, so I can only observe from what I heard from people, because I know on the day, a couple of, I think everything stopped on that day. And I think no one has done anything like that before in the history of South Sudan. Imagine like, going out, and maybe if you drop the needle, maybe you'll hear that, because there was nothing. Everything stopped on that day. So I think in a way, although it might feel like, oh, they haven't got, they haven't got an army with them, they haven't got this, but I think I'm sure there is some impact. And even like now, we are actually talking about it now. So that means a lot, really, for Pcca. So I think in a way, I kind of give them credit for that, because they came out of nowhere, but now we're talking about them. We know their leaders now, and we know that they've done this and they've asked people to do this, because no one has dared before in South Sudan to say something like that. So I think, I'm sure there is, maybe if we're just gonna have to wait and see what's for them for the future. But for now, I think they've actually made the footprint, really. I believe that. Thank you.
Thank you much. Thank you so much, Thabo. David, it's your turn to hear your response to the question. Briefly as well, if you can. Yeah, you are muted. You are muted. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, actually, in my view, without any doubt, the Pcca has vigorously shaken the South Sudanese political arena, or the South Sudanese political tree, and it can justifiably claim that it has influenced in a positive way the behavior of the government, regardless of whether the government admits this or not. For example, salaries have been paid. I heard. Legislative assembly processes have been accelerated. The government has become more responsive to events in the country, like the president spoke, responded to what was happening in the country for the first time. So that means that the work of the Pcca has influenced the behavior of the government in a positive way. Also, the Pcca provided a powerful articulation of the citizens' concerns and aspirations. The Pcca has improved the attitude and the message of the opposition. It has caused, let me just say this cliche, it has caused a paradigm shift in the nature and packaging of the opposition message. Now they are addressing the issues rather than individuals. They are targeting the government and the government leadership in their attacks, in their political attacks. So not the individuals, not any group or categories in the country. So, and also they are not offending or threatening any categories in the country. So their message is a real, genuine opposition kind of message. Yeah, so that's what I think is the impact of the Pcca over the short period it has appeared in. Any shortfalls or something like that, shortcomings, I will say them in the next questions. But this is the positive side. I say the appearance of the Pcca was something positive in a way. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a brilliant first round. The next question is, in its 50-day campaign, has the Pcca drawn the people of South Sudan closer together, or has it failed to do so? Obviously, it's no secret that as well as our country being desperately poor now, that our government, although, as was said, they achieved the independence of South Sudan, which is something, of course, we cannot belittle or forget. However, besides that, the government has failed to achieve anything at all. Meanwhile, instead of us coming together, we have become even more divided in recent years since we become independent. So it became independent. So the question really is, in relation to this particular issue of division among us, has the Pcca has any impact, especially a positive impact, or has it not? Emmanuel.
Thank you once again. I think the Pcca, to my opinion, did not draw or bring closer the people of South Sudan together, because as I said earlier, people were coming out of the war, trying to rebuild, trying to connect the dots that the country were having, and people were overwhelmed, thinking of going, maybe spending these 3 years of peace agreement, seeing the warring parties together in Juba, trying to cross. And when the Ppca entered into the space, people become more worried, fear of losing what we have today, and also seeing this country is also being plunked back according to the LIP's experiences. The LIP experiences mean a lot of war has happening. They started small, and as some of my colleagues on the panel put it, that it has done maybe something good at a good time. Really, it's not a good time. This is a very hardship, very difficult time. And why? Number of parties, number of warring group with arm, with gun in hand, are still in the bush. This is the time that we, all of us, people of South Sudan, should hold the hand together and try to brothers and sisters who are still in the bush, saying, "Hey guys, come back. Let's try our best, all of us together collectively with the government and this opposition that agree to work hand in hand." Uh, though people deny that there is no peace, there is peace. If there is no peace, these giant warring parties would have not been together in Juba if there was no peace. There is peace really coming, but we don't need to break this small peace we have. We need to put all it together, people of South Sudan everywhere where we are, and try to keep these people or these parties accountable so they can be able to lead us into the election. Although there will be people think there will be no election. If there will be no election, this is where Pcca can be in a position to stand up. But this is an agreement. At the same time, some of the members in the Pcca were part of the peace process during those times. So what makes them now become harsh on what they agree to? What about 3 years we agree on? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's try not to respond to each other. Let's try to address the questions. I'm just a general advice. Lem, please come in.
Okay, thank you again, Brother Mawan, and everyone here on the panel. I think Pcca is truly a coalition. For the first time since the history of the contemporary political South Sudan, has brought that our people from all tribal setup, let me put it that way, we have all come together as a community, ethnic. First time again, the kind of love that we long for has been demonstrated. If somebody was one time in the SPL National Convention, Second National Convention 2008, if any of us were there, you would have seen that we were already divided on the tribal line, something initiated during the days of the SPLA, SPLM. Earlier days of SPLA united the South Sudanese. Now, when you look at the coalitions, it is the coalitions of all ethnicities of South Sudan. If you look at all the opposition parties, these are tribal, it is a single clans movement. The same within the SPLM party that you see in Juba, though it looks diverse, but you call them a collection of mafias, cartels, people with one agenda, and you can call them one tribe, though they are representatives of our people. But the Pcca is truly a coalition of our people. though the messaging of Pcca, as I said earlier, is not loud and clear, it is still, it is moving slowly. And our people got that message. What it is happening and what surprises me sometimes, it is that we have emphasis on something we call peace. There's no peace without development. If hunger, famine, floods, oil pollution, and cattle wrestling is killing our peoples in thousands and thousands, what people tend to take for peace is perhaps maybe the coalition of the gangs in power, those people those who come together, elites in Juba. I think that's what people think that is peace. That's not peace. When you look at it, now the current, a little bit of breath that we see, the breath of air that at least is being witnessed in the country, it is at least what could be attributed to personal initiatives, such as what is happening now currently in Lagos State for the first time, because we had an individual that has come to, and the same we are seeing in Warab states. And this kind of little piece that we are seeing, it is individual initiatives where right people are put in charge of that. But look what is happening to our country, embezzling of billions of dollars. So let's not think we can, of course, it is always normal to assume, and then our people can think there's peace. So this coalition to me, I can say, Brother Mawan rightly, it has brought together people of different, those who before could never sit down. You see there's coalitions of Eastern Equatorians, Western Equatorians, and the entire Upper Nile, and the greater region of Bahr el Ghazal. It has brought all these people together for the first time to speak on the same issue. Though, of course, they are not well organized, their message is clearly a universal message, because they are advocating for one thing, a peace and the love that we want as a people. So I can safely say it has brought people together, even when people are not even saying it, because of the fear of the fear that we know of what kind of people are in power. But SPLM is truly a party that way. We need to restructure. We need to bring back our ideals. I cannot, of course, throw it in the dustbin, but the current people who are there, truly, they are not really bringing any unity. This peace they're saying, or this kind of the structure they have, will never unite our people. You look at thousands and thousands of MPs that are put now in the national parliament. That is already a disaster. Those people are representing their own tribal groups, and that is going to create a war, leave alone the military branch that I don't know yet. So let's hope, let's say this is truly a coalition of all South Sudanese.
Thank you so much, Lem. Thank you so much, Lem. Nyadol.
I think we should really commend them for their attempt to bring together South Sudanese from different backgrounds. Perhaps the experiences differ, but my observation has been that since the 2013 war, there's been significant divides in the South Sudanese communities that have been replicated in some ways, even in the diaspora. And for some of us, I think it's been a very painful thing to witness communities seeing themselves as enemies, as opposed to people that occupy the same state. So I think that the constant attempt to try and bring people from different tribal backgrounds together to work together is something that is so wonderful to see, and I really commend Pcca attempt to do so. But I don't think that this is something that we can leave in their hands. I think this is in some ways part of our own personal commitment as South Sudanese or people of that heritage on what we're going to do. I have a slightly different thinking around this, in that I think that you hear the statement that we are one people. I don't think we are one people, and I don't think that that's a problem. I think we are a diverse country with over 60-something or more tribes and languages. And what we need to do is the ability to manage that diversity, not to create some form of a conformity of oneness, but to be able to thrive in a diverse country, to recognize our diversity in the history that we tell, in the representations that we have in our institutions. A kind of an illustration of that is what is done in Australia in terms of multiculturalism, right? It's the idea that different people of different faith and different background can still live cohesively together. But that's an investment. That's something you literally have to pay political credit to, but you also have to pay financially. You know, in Australia, there are dedicated services that try to improve our social cohesion. And you don't see that in South Sudan, I think partly because we think that this is an organic thing that just happens out of nowhere. But I think to a large degree, being able to create a socially cohesive society is social engineering to some extent. And that needs sophisticated political thinking and strategy, as well as investment in it. And I don't even think we are at that stage yet in terms of our national conversation, just because we're still stuck at the very, very basic ideas of building or trying to rebuild. We haven't yet begun to think conceptually about what it means to actually be a South Sudanese as a political idea, as opposed to it just something that occurs naturally. So I think no matter what the Pcca does, the idea of building a people that see themselves as South Sudanese as opposed to people that occupy a geographical space called South Sudan, I think it's an ongoing process, and it's good to see organizations that emerge with part of their structure trying to include that diversity and that representation in its heart. So truly commend them for that. My final comment is not just about in terms of uniting us as a people, but the idea of how do we create a space for expanding, you know, the ideas that are available in our public space. And I think that it's not mutually exclusive. And this, you know, that we have to have peace, and then we have to have Pcca, and then we have to have some other groups. They can all coexist in the same space, because that's what is, if we're claiming to be a democratic state, that's what happened. There is always numerous ongoing conversations about how you structure that country and a competition of those ideas. So I don't think it should be seen automatically as a threat when someone emerges. I would like to see even more political discourse in South Sudan, even more ideas about how we can become a better nation, or how it can become a better nation, and automatically not seeing those as a threat to any individual, but seeing it as an exercise of our civil duty in order to create a South Sudan. Because now, when we think about it, most of us don't support violent action. So the only way we should be able to contribute to our country, since we should not be taking arms, is to contribute ideas. You know, to contribute ideas into the public debate. And, you know, the SPLM, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, South Sudan at the moment operates, at least practically, as a one-state political party country. You know, the other political parties exist, but they're just really not effective and not recognized. And that really limits the space in which we can think creatively about the progress of South Sudan into the future. I truly believe the way forward is organizations that looks like, you know, Pcca, organizations that are representative of the South Sudanese, the South Sudanese diversity in terms of its ethnicity, some of its languages, and even in terms of its religious structures. And that's something that they've started. That's something that we need to continue.
Brilliant, Nyadol. Thank you very much. Sahatini, have you become more united, or has it not changed since the Pcca appeared on the scene?
Well, as my predecessor just said, I think it's a wonderful attempt, and I think it's the beginning of a great attempt at uniting our people on a different basis rather than factional, tribal, or otherwise. And, you know, as South Sudanese, it has become all too easy to become cynical and apprehensive of any political movement or change. And I think sometimes we just have to how can I say, at least entertain the idea and debate of what something could be. I'm of the opinion that if any movement or any proposition is objectively true, then however you scrutinize it, you will end up with the truth. And I'm going to answer this question also by by proposing another angle. I do believe that the current government in South Sudan has another option, which is less expensive in terms of finance, in terms of lives, in terms of any other metric, and more effective, which is to confront the Pcca on the aspect of objectivity and ideas, and to do so anywhere and everywhere in the world wherever it's possible, especially in diaspora. I do believe that we have a lot of extremely well educated, intelligent, wise, and experienced people in the government. And I think that they should go ahead and seek out that challenge, not only from the Pcca, but any other such movements, and intellectually demonstrate their superiority and that it is that their particular project is the correct one in engaging in such a debate. The reason why I'm saying this is the cost, the structural costs of what people would see as repression will far exceed the costs and benefits, or how can I say, overshadow the benefits of doing it otherwise. And more importantly, not only for issues of diplomacy and truly establishing our nation as a sustainable state, there is no better way to quell such a movement if it is a threat. And there is no better way to tap into such a movement if it is an opportunity than to engage with it on the debate of ideas. And we should do that as much as possible. I hope to see the Pcca grow, as well as other parties or other movements which are in opposition to it, because that's what we need, as others have said before, to have a fruitful diversity of ideas and success. I'm really glad that as we're talking here, none of us are referring to, I don't know if you've witnessed it, but none of us are referring to any of our ethnic, cultural, or religious, reference points to make our observations or our remarks. We are all trying to break down the situation objectively and provide some form of reasonable, way forward to the best of our abilities, according to our perceptions, our context, our experience, our education, and so on and so forth. And I think it will cost far less to the government. It will be much more beneficial to them. And it will be much more conducive to peace and prosperity if this is sought out. The cost of a conference, the cost of a discussion, it doesn't cost anything at all. It's quite, compared to the structural cost of what people will see as repression, it will be actually a win-win for everyone. But now, of course, this is saying it, and then there is doing it. And of course, we know that the government itself is not a monolithic element. There are contradictory currents within the government, as within the Pcca, as within other movements. There will always be contradictory or nuances. Individuals who are there as professionals. I know individuals who have engaged in public service or otherwise, sheerly out of patriotism, whether even to the point of being blind to what is objectively wrong with the system. But specifically with what you were saying in terms of how it has drawn people together, I think it is the beginning. And I think it probably hasn't gone a couple of months now. It's probably still too early to determine it. But I feel and I hear a lot of people resonate with the message. We need to encourage that, not because it's the Pcca, but because it is the Republican thing to do. We are a republic. We're not a kingdom. We're not a theocracy. We are a republic. We should own each other's heritage. We should own each other's experience and wisdom. And from that basis, with that mindset, we should be able to come out with the best possible solutions. The only one thing that I'm going to, and it kind of overlaps over the flaws, but I think it's still pertinent with this particular question, is the fact that defining the people is really important, because the message and how the Pcca talks is, again, they talk like academics, they talk like intellectuals, and I know that they have representatives who are probably a bit more accessible to the population, but the message can be adapted, can be tailored to be more.
You can actually say that in the last question, actually, as part of your critique. Yeah, in terms of what they can prove. Yeah. We'll come to that. We'll come to that. Yeah, thank you, Sahatini. Jok, quickly, if you may.
Yes.
Are we more united since the Pcca appeared?
Well, first of all, just to echo what others have said about the nature of our existence and coexistence as a nation, as a people, one must realize that nations are made, that they are not born. No nation comes ready-made, and as a result, who makes it? Who are the people who make a nation? It is all of us. It is political leadership has to design and test it and run it by people. It's a work in progress. No nation has it completed, even those that are 500 years old. The Chinese are still struggling with the Falun Gong and the rest of them. The Americans are still struggling with issues of race. So what we have in South Sudan is a government which has used division and divisiveness as a means for governing. And as such, the coming of Pcca has really started a discussion in the different direction from what the government has been and where the government has been going, which is divisiveness and divisions among people along whatever political or ethnic or regional. South Sudan, since over the last 16 years, has been a country riding division as a political tool. Now, Pcca said that in order for us to work together and live together in a country that recognizes one of us, the key ingredient of making a nation is that people have got to see themselves represented in the body politic. Whether in celebration of our unique identities on a national platform in equitable way, or whether that is financial investments that we put up for people to live a better life, people have got to see themselves represented. Otherwise, what is in it for them to be members of that nation? And I think Pcca is speaking the language of equitable, visible representation of all of us. And that is what is going to address the long history of divisions. Even Northern Sudan used to use division among South Sudanese as a way to weaken them. In order for us to become independent and then replicate what the North was doing to us, is just it shows that we are not thinking people. The people in the political leadership today are not thinking about nationhood and about what it takes to build a nation. So I think Pcca is definitely on the right track. It's not going to be easy for them to change what had been a tradition overnight, but they have started in the right direction. Thank you.
Thabo, did you hear me, Thabo? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, no, I didn't hear you. Yeah. Hello, sorry, I just have a little bit of a technical problem here, but it's fine now.
No, we can see
right.
it. Yeah, we can see and hear you properly.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mawan. Yeah, the question, is interesting question because I've kind of thought of it this way, because in South Sudan, you can't actually see exactly whether it's actually brought people together, because right now, the political arena is kind of like everyone is silent. You can't, they're not going to be kind of conversing, having dialogues and things like that about what's happened. So because of that, I kind of feel like it's going to be either you are with the government or you're not, or you're against the government. So I think because of that, I think in South Sudan, probably, maybe it takes time. Maybe we'll kind of find out later how this has kind of like brought people together. But definitely, if I'm talking about in diaspora, I can see definitely it actually, brought people together, because we kind of like talking more about it, and the South Sudanese, they kind of like trying to converse with each other, that's always a kind of like a point. You have to start somewhere, because our social fabric, like the last few years, has kind of suffered a lot because of all the things that's been happening to us. So you kind of realize that we kind of like unintentionally, we kind of like group ourselves according to kind of like our, whether ethnic or tribal tribes, without even kind of like knowing that it's only because of what's happened. But I think I kind of like feel with this, since the Pcca come in, kind of like things has kind of like changed a little bit. And I kind of feel like this might give us kind of like a better atmosphere for all of us together, to start working together and try to find maybe something, because there is so many things that we have in common really here. And the same thing at home, we have the same kind of things. But if you're at home, imagine yourself like, in South Sudan, you actually don't know who are these people who kind of like saying this. Are they trustworthy? Are they going, because there's so many groups that's been there before, and then nothing really has happened. So in a way, it's kind of like a little bit kind of like for them, they might need a little bit more persuasion, and maybe they might need maybe to see something, they can see that there's something that worth pursuing. But I think from kind of maybe from side of the government, maybe what they should, as somebody said it before, is to kind of like help us really to kind of like have a conversation with each other. And that way, while we're pursuing peace at the same time, that might actually help us to bring us together, rather than kind of like pulling it apart. And if we can be together and we can kind of try and see the problems we are having, and try to find maybe solution, or even just talk about things, then maybe we'll kind of like have a way to kind of like solve the problem, whatever happened. Because I remember when I was younger, that was a long time ago in the 70s, when I used to be in the north, I didn't realize that, I didn't know even which tribe I was, although I knew. But normally when you kind of like together and you are doing, whether it's an event, we always knew ourselves as South Sudanese. You won't say like, I'm from this tribe. And even when I was in Juba, it's kind of like the same thing. We've never kind of like felt like, I belong to this or that. We will always be in a South Sudanese. So this is the thing I think we should really kind of like encourage it to kind of like be together and do things together, and always kind of like remember we all kind of like coexist together. So without trying to kind of like be together and see what's kind of like what brings us together. So definitely it's nothing is going to change, because if we are going to have peace, we need to go and we need to live with each other. And even with development and all these things, it has to be kind of like addressed really, because this is one thing that's very important for all of us to know, that we can't, coexist, together if there's no harmony between us. So I think maybe there's a little bit of bringing us together, especially in the diaspora, for sure. I would say that for sure. But maybe there's something as well. Maybe there's a little bit of things, maybe in South Sudan, maybe it will happen soon, if they can see like this changes, or if they can see like this things are happening, it started to happen. But for now, we're just gonna maybe have to see what's, if the government will kind of like have kind of an open atmosphere, or kind of like give help to other people as well, so they can kind of converse with each other. So we have, this kind of like discussion that we're having really, for better future for all of us. Thank you.
Somebody's muted.
David.
Is it my turn?
Yes, David. Sorry. Yeah, please.
Okay.
I was muted.
Yeah, thank you all. I see to a point, the Pcca has united the citizens of South Sudan, especially as Thabo has referred to it, especially in diaspora. It has united the people around its political message, around the articulations of the concerns, of the aspirations of the people. But with that, it has fallen short. It has fallen short, or it has caused some kind of little division in when it comes to what has to be done. You know, the course of action. That's where the division came, because the Pcca asking for the government to leave, that was like jeopardizing the current peace agreement, which there are people, a lot of people who are hopeful in this peace. Give it a go. Give this peace a go. Go up until election. So people have this hope, and people are not sure what will come if if the government is changing this way. Who will come and take over? You know. So that is where the division came. It's like if the government is changed through demonstration, it's like pushing the country into chaos or a perilous path, or going back to wars and stuff like that. So that is where it has fallen short.
David, sorry, David. In fact, that's the last question. Yeah. We'll talk about biggest Flaw.
No, it's unity. That's the
unity. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So
this is where it fails to unite people.
I said the aspect of unity. I said the aspect of unity. Okay. And I'm not talking about the aspect of disunity. You know. Okay. So another point is recently, up until recently, the leaders of the Pcca were part of the government, and so the sudden change into calling for the resignation of the government has also raised suspicions of personal grudges or personal disappointments on the part of the leaders. And also it has like kind of confirmed the accusations of accusations of personal grudges within the system, because they were part of the system. So that's how I see it. It has united people to a certain degree, but what they call for has divided the people.
Opinions. Thank you so much. Thank you. Sorry to misunderstand your question. I understand it now. Thank you so much. We really nearly ran out of time. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to give you maybe just 1 minute. Quickly answer the last question. The last question was going to be, what flaws, if any, do you find in the Pcca demands and pledges? Okay, so what flaws are in their demands and pledges? So instead of that, could you think of one flaw and give it to us in about half a minute, and then we can wrap up. So, Emmanuel.
Okay. What the Pcca
What's
call
the
for?
biggest single flaw in their message, according
Yes,
to you?
is called for at this stage. To me, is not the right time for them to call it for, because we're still struggling. All of us are still struggling in pieces, and they will. This one has already disuniting us, and will continue to disunite. That's one point. The communication itself would have not been that way. So we need a better communication as people of South Sudan together. I'm not against the Pcca, as people may think, or some may think, but not the right time. We need to work closely, all of us together, to bring these wrangling groups and the people with guns in hand who are still outside to come together, all of us to come together. The other thing in communication, I think in 2015, 16, I started a program called Communication Stage for people of South Sudan, whereby the languages we use are very hardship, and they also dividing us. They keep dividing us. So it was like we need to bring all of us together in Western country and focus on what is happening in Western country and what can help us, people of South Sudan in a Western country, to try together and merge into the front line in South Sudan. If we could have done this, so we come together, we unite, we need ourselves in the Western country. So we merge into the international stage, into the international community stage, because we are talking of issues of South Sudan. We are talking of wrong government in South Sudan and all other opposition parties. But we have not done some things that would have been done in the international community before we merge to the front line. This is one of the things that can help us, unite us. Seeing Nyadol, for example, my sister, seeing Thabo, my sister, seeing Lem, my brother, rather seeing Lem as an opposition, seeing Lem as somebody that is not part of me, is part of me, we are together. Why I say this, international community really is also, they're not putting the pressure into the South Sudan situation, but they are creating problem also into the issues of South Sudan. So it would have been our responsibility, especially the scholars, the professional, the educators, and the leaders in this space we are in international community, to work together with them, trying to advocate for the right thing. Removal of the current leadership and current oppositions and whatever we call it will be easy if we come together at the right time. This is not the right time, because we cannot sign a document saying, let's give this 3 years period, trying to bring people together, trying to reconcile. And again, we call for another cohesion or another chaos in the country. They will not work. You know, when we came out of Sudan, for example, in 2011, we did not took that good time. It's only 1 year, and then we flunked the country into the war. This is also emerging, and some people are seeing it might even coming at the same time. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Emmanuel. Thank you for that. Lem, please briefly, what's the PPCA's biggest flaw?
I didn't get that well. Are you asking what is it, flaws or fault?
No. Yeah, what's their biggest failure? What are their biggest shortcomings? What are their biggest flaws to you? Maybe pick up one. As I said, we're running out of time, so we just have a quick round. What could you have done better if you were one of their members?
Thank you so much, Brother Mawan, and for this last question again. I think the greatest tragedy of Africa.
Excuse me, Mawan.
Yeah.
I think we should give ourselves I know our time was 1 hour. We should give ourselves up to 2 hours for this one, just for this one, because this discussion is very interesting to me. So let us give ourselves up to
an hour and a half now. It's an hour
yeah.
and a half.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we go through these questions as we used to the other questions. That's my suggestion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let us take our 3 minutes as normal. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mabor. I think that's probably
Thank
fair
you so
point.
much, Brother Mawan.
The point is here you have to balance between between saying all the things that are important and whether our audience actually are going to be ready to watch the whole program. So that's what we are.
Yeah, I understand.
Please go ahead, but also try to be brief. Thank you very much, Lem.
Okay. Thank you so much, Brother Mawan, and once again, everyone on the panel. The point that I was trying to make was the tragedy of Africa is building nation or the states. And anywhere on the planet, perhaps maybe other people study it differently. My take is Africa does not thrive well in nation or the states. We thrive well in a territorial state. And this, for us to transition from another state of mind, develop. This is why you are seeing Africa is at war, and it will never develop. When we are talking, when we are thinking, we are importing ideas, we are bringing in this conceptions, that does not work. It will never work. And South Sudan will remain at war for eternity. What we need, it is legislating, recognizing territorial states. That is where we thrive well as a people. We are people of the land. So people are identified by land. Once we recognize that, then we would be so successful. When we are building a political state, like the way we are doing, or anywhere in Africa is doing, Africa will always be led by elites, and it will always remain at war. Corruption will always remain like that. The Pcca shortcomings, what I see as not truly a failure, was how they were rushed. They were in rush. They did not take time to give us time as well as a nation and as citizenship as well. They did not look into this strategy. They did not strategize well. So it is in this rush that I call part of it was people were either we were too excited or people were truly they wanted things done quickly. And we know the course of revolutions takes ages. Sometimes we have short memories as a people. We tend to think SPLA, SPLM was the start of our revolutionary struggle. And that's not. And it is not even Nyanya One. And it is not even, say, Abdul Latif. We can go back in time in history to build truly a national movement, a revolutionary movement. So when we have this, if we are bringing this idea saying, okay, let's copy what is possible in Europe, what is possible in Australia or in America, if we take these ideas back to think this is how we are going to build our country will never be built. Of course, we might think it is academically we can use anything. I do physics and mathematics and data, and I know what it costs. But you cannot always use examples to solve the real world problem. You must be involved in that activity to get it right. Examples of the failure banking system in South Sudan was when people were so excited, they copy here and paste examples from the World Bank, and they say they will apply them immediately, and that's how Sudan will work. And we know this is how Africa has been underdeveloped, using the examples advised and these dates, the way we are in already. A nation that is so blessed with all resources, and yet we wanted to use these examples. We get debt, and now we are in debt. And these elites are trying, instead of building the current level we have, then it is different. So my approach to Pcca, let them take time to communicate with the people. Messaging must be truly clear and understood. By us condoning the current people in the, it is South Sudan, it is the problem of the South Sudanese. I don't think whether it is a SPLM party problem, because I know there are so many of our colleagues in the government who had different opinions, but they all are part of these distractions, whether they are in oppositions, military oppositions, or in political oppositions, or in the government, or even the Pcca itself. So we have a issue, a tragedy, which is truly a South Sudanese problem. It cannot be changed overnight by an organization which is running differently. So this is why I'm a bit reluctant, and I see somehow we might achieve. I like it. It's a great idea. It's the only movement that is coalition in its character, but the rest are tribal in character. No one can tell us this has done this. So I encourage the movement, and I like it, but they need to communicate with the people. It cannot be again another elite program like the SPLM party and like all other political parties in South Sudan, which just created cultism, personality cult, of which it is only the leader who is important. And when we are speaking, we are not speaking of organizations. Let people own the organizations. Let grassroots be involved in the organizations. I speak this to our colleagues there. I told them, the grassroots need to mobilize. The process of even people going out has to be owned by the local leaders and the communities. Let them own it. They are the one in problem. It is not the political group, not even elites, not even educated. I do my own personal educational training. That's not what South Sudan needs. They need to own this, so that they go on the streets, and then they are the people united. I think I will I'll stop here. Thank you.
That's a brilliant contribution. Thanks so much, Lem. Nyadol.
I think it's very hard coming from a civil war and a history of wars to be able to create a narrative that people feel invested in and that they think that they can, that there will be positive outcome of it, partly because people are exhausted in having expectations that are not met. So I suppose, if there is a criticism, is that it's the idea of developing a narrative that everyone can buy into and pursue. But I'm quite careful in terms of criticizing movements, because if you've ever been involved in any form of social organization, you realize it's a very, very difficult task to be able to accomplish that. However, the lawyer in me is going to bust if I don't reply to some of the comments that have been made. And with respect, I think that in terms of time, I think the SPLA has had time. If my 10-year-old was behaving like a 3-year-old, I'll be very, very concerned. And for a 10-year-old administration to still be making some just really basic mistakes is simply inexcusable. And I think that it's not acceptable that we should continue to demand that the people of South Sudan accept substandard performance by government, and that these people are entitled to those positions. In terms of the right time, there is never a right time to challenge. It was never the right time for the South Sudanese people to start a revolutionary movement against the North. It is never convenient for the political class to have new and emerging ideas that challenge them. The final part is that they're not mutually exclusive. You can still have pursue this peace process and still welcome a diversity of voices and people. It is so important that we encourage that in South Sudan, and we encourage the idea that not one individual or one organization or one group of people have the solutions for this country. It is actually a challenge on us because we tend to be, and this is a very big generalization, so excuse me, we tend to carry a lot of pride. And pride is good because when you're assaulted, you fight for what is right. But pride also has to have humility. And humility means accepting that sometimes you're wrong. It's also accepting that sometimes you're not the right person for the job. And I think these are attitudes that we need to develop in our political space. We don't need to just talk about ideas and I suppose, or politics, but also what are the characters that we want to see in our leaders? What kind of behaviors do we want to see in our leaders? What kind of approach, what kind of humility, what kind of human beings are they? Are they decent people? I don't want to be led by someone like Donald Trump. So I think we should really welcome this and not see it, the Pcca and movement, and encourage more people to join the political space. This is the only way we will be able to identify which are good ideas, which are bad ideas, which ideas can work, which ideas can be changed. The final comment is that I'm glad that the movement is something that started in South Sudan. I think that all of us who live in the diaspora can contribute, should contribute, but I think that there is a respectful space that continue to remain for those people on the ground who knows the day-to-day experiences of what's happening in South Sudan. And I'm really glad that the organization, the Pcca is emerging in that space. Hopefully, we see what happens in the future.
Thank you so much, Nyadol. Thank you so much. What are the major flaws that you see in the Pcca's approach of things?
Thank you, Mawan. And again, I really want to appreciate this discussion, which is really interesting, and all the feedbacks and observations. It is really a fascinating topic. Number one, I would have said that, especially being a republic, we have a constitution, of course, and we have laws, and we have certain guarantees about our rights and responsibilities. But of course, there is a reality, and those can be twisted politically, legally, and things like that to suit a particular agenda, depending on who is talking, whether in opposition or in government. But I wish that there was a clarification of basic principles which are non-negotiable, admitted by the Pcca, and that can be corroborated by everyone. Like, for example, if you take the American political system, freedom of speech is non-negotiable, right? This is something which is a cornerstone of U.S. politics. It doesn't matter left wing or right wing. Some will try, of course, to affect that somehow, but nevertheless, it is a cornerstone of it. This is why you can have Islamists saying certain things, or neo-Nazi parties, and so on and so forth, but it's a defining feature of that particular republic. And I wish we had a clarification of such sets of principles, because once we agree on very simple things, it doesn't have to be complicated legal, constitutional, lingo, but very basic principles of what we all agree on. That's one thing. I know that, of course, we're a new nation, 10 years in the making. We can argue, of course, about the last 50, 60 years of struggle, but I still think that this clarification of principle will lay down a powerful foundation upon which the rest of the political program can be firmly grounded on. The second thing is, I've also been skeptical about the targeting of the top government officials, president, vice president specifically, not because whether or not they should be there or not. I mean, this is a constitutional issue. We haven't had an election in the last 6 years. So in terms of mandate, there's this can be disputed in so many respects. But I'm concerned out of what that would imply for people who would want to ascribe to the movement without necessarily deal with those high-level political issues. And the reason why I say this is because the scope of the Pcca itself is quite large. It's quite broad. We talk about regime change. We talk about military reform. They talk about economic revamp. They talk about what else? National identity. Balancing the ecosystem. There is really a broad range of actions, which also I think will be could contribute to a lack of focus, and it could play in their favor to choose a very narrow but specific and fundamental issue to focus on, one that transcends again the cross-section of society across tribal, factional, class boundaries, so that the results can also be better measured according to a specific time frame. Because now, if you're dealing with, I remember reading and listening to some of the messages, this is an extremely wide scope of action, and I think that it will also leave them exposed to a lot of criticism if this is not achieved within a specified time frame. I also think that supporting the electoral or the preparation for the electoral process, whether it is structurally supporting or debating or inviting or challenging any shortfalls that are currently existing, I think this is probably a better objective, in the sense that we are in a transition anyway. We're already in transition, whether we like it or not. The question is, how can we provide ourselves with a firm foundation to then set up the new chapter of our republic? And I think the election, whether it happens next year or within 2 years or 3 years, so long as we have people who are determined, who are qualified, and who are committed to make sure this happens, we're not going to have a problem. My last point will be on the issue of accountability. I think that the Pcca needs to also, and I'm not going to call it a shortfall because it's only been 2 months. It's a very short period of time. We need to let those people grow and develop themselves, but to invite debate and discussion in the diaspora, to establish representatives, and to be consistent and coherent with what they are asking the government to do. They are asking the government to be accountable at so many levels, right? So we're talking about, again, the ecosystem, the military, we're talking about politics, we're talking about economy, and so on and so forth. Likewise, that same level of scrutiny that they are requiring from the authorities should also be applied to them, not only to them specifically, but also to any other movement or party, and taking place in the diaspora, right, within a methodical, objective approach, and if possible, also that could also inspire improvement not only within them, but also other agencies and organizations across South Sudan society. But those are shortfalls which I think natural with any movement. And my personal interest, Mawan, we've had those discussions before in light of academic research. But my personal interest is that I do not believe in factionalism. I do not believe in ascribing to a political party to change a nation. I believe that party allegiance is an anchor or is a constraint that sometimes, if you don't toe the party line, the party, in itself becomes an idol. And that is not conducive to civic responsibility and have a set civic life. So if anything, our allegiance is to our nation and to our peoples. And our objectives, our political programs should be tailored to specifically what is required according to the context. In times of liberation, we had the SPLM, which fulfilled its purpose. We achieved independence. That is history. That is a fact. And nobody can take that away from them. Now, we are now in a process of reconstruction, and we need a system that allows us to do that specifically, addressing issues of identity, issues of corruption, issues of professionalism in the army, and so on and so forth. And I'll be looking forward to engage with that. And one very last point, and I'm always emphasizing this by virtue of doing a similar work as RBC within the Atanda Live talk show, is the fact that there are specific adjustments that we need to conduct on an intra community or tribal basis, so that we can bring our communities on a level where we can truly exchange and interact with each other in the context of a republic. This is extremely important. And I think that if this is included instead of avoiding, as Sister, I think was, forgive me if I mispronounced the name, Sister Nyadol, who said earlier, not to ignore those differences, but to acknowledge them, and also to preemptively acknowledge the potential conflict based on our history, based on whatever has happened, so that our republic is truly firmly founded and there is no excuses given for future divisions, civil conflict, ethnic conflict, and so on and so forth. So thank you very much again, Mawan, and all the panelists. It's been a fruitful discussion. I'm looking forward to additional debates and discussion on the topic. And I hope that the Pcca can be an example and can also demonstrate its accountability and leadership beyond South Sudan in the diaspora as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sahatini. Jok.
Yes. Once again, great.
Where did they fall short?
Yes, beautiful discussion. The sort of things that South Sudan need more of. And so, in responding to your question about what if there is any shortfall or flaw in Pcca's ideas and approach to its agenda, I would say that if any at all, it would be the fact that they did not take time to build a movement, because this is movement building. And movement building means reaching as many people as possible, the people that you think would be your constituency, which is all South Sudanese community. And there are ways you do it. Some of us who have been part of student unions or political movements, we know there are certain things, there are certain techniques you use in building that movement, such that there is a groundswell of people who will emerge on the designated day to start with the bomb, with a big explosion, instead of announcing yourself and then go back to doing the nitty-gritty of movement building after you have announced yourself in a place that is not favorable to ideas, to new ideas, especially ideas around changing the government or fixing the country. So instead of building its cells all across the country, identifying who coordinates the cells, raising money even, because this sort of thing requires large resources, because people need to be on the phone, people need to access internet, people need to even fly and travel to locations in order to mobilize people. It requires resources. It needed to inbuild security system that would have helped in avoiding the sort of thing that is now happening to Kwelagorkwel. Building into the movement a security system that safeguards the welfare of your people. I think that would have been my approach, to say, let us build a movement first. Let us be sure that our message has reached people, and that we have ascertained how we are going to deal with the issue of the internet when the government shuts it down on the day of our protest. How are we going to deal with a situation where the whole world thinks that we are power seekers, we are power grabbers? If they think that you are doing a coup, you will be condemned and you will not have allies at the initial stages. So you need to do your homework with regards to reaching out to the international community, reaching out to all your people, assuring that you have some resources to do the basic things, and ensuring that our communication system is in place and intact. And it is not just a form of communication that send messages. It's a form of communication that has verified the message is going to be clear to everyone, right? Because you can send eloquent messages and put them on the internet, but how many people in the country that you want to reach and who can understand the language you have used in that message? I think those things, it's not too late to do it. They have started it, and now they are discovering their shortcomings. And I think and pray that they are going back to address these shortfalls as they go along, building this movement up to the time more and more South Sudanese will be on board, and when political transitions will happen. It's also the onus is also on them to say that here is what we propose. Should we succeed in ousting the government, here is our project, so that people can start learning about it as well. That would be the only way for them to in the future. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Jok. Thank you, Jok. Thank you, Jok. Thabo.
Hey, what's up?
Papa,
Huh?
we want to say good.
Okay.
Good night, Papa.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Sorry. Let me be.
Thank you, Mawan. Right, to answer the question, I'm gonna kind of tackle it in a scientific way, because I feel like if you have a theory, because as a new organization or as a new civil kind of group coming, you have to kind of like, if you have all your ideas, you have to kind of think like, if it's a theory, how do you kind of make sure that it's going to happen, or you are going to achieve what you actually, whatever you've kind of like put yourself up for. So it's what's the probability of achieving that? So I think maybe this is where they kind of like a little bit kind of like where the flaws are, because as a newcomer, you have to make sure that you've actually done your groundwork first before you actually even like just touch the water or try and just test the water, as they say, because you wouldn't know, nobody will know you. They don't know who you are. They have no idea who that person, what are they going to do? How can we trust them? Do they really mean what they're saying? Because you can say whatever you say, but at the end of the day, you have to have actually something to kind of like to carry you through. Because if you haven't got your foundations, like if you are building something up, if you haven't started the foundation the right way, then what's going to happen? Just while you just kind of like midway or halfway around that building, whatever you've done, it might collapse. And that's what happened. Because if you are ready to tackle things like regime change, you have to think, okay, if that's happened, if we succeeded and it happened, how are we going to do that? We haven't got an army, we haven't got a party, we haven't got a couple of things we just started. So I think that's kind of like, I don't know whether they rushed it or maybe time is not. I don't think it's that. I think it's just if you are started new, you need to establish yourself a little bit, and especially in South Sudan, and people get to know you, and you have to kind of like make sure you've done all your theories, and then by doing that, checking how feasible is this to happen. Because I, for one, once I've heard it, it was quite ambitious, like what they've actually coming up, what they were saying, and all their pledges, and all the other things. It's quite ambitious and new. But at the same time, when you think about it scientifically, you kind of like see, I don't know if that's possible. How is it going to be possible to achieve this? I had kind of like a couple of doubts about the possibility of achieving this. But in a way, I kind of like, I know, although it didn't go the way they wanted, but of course, we are talking about it now. So they've actually done something. So maybe they're just going back to the drawing board and maybe try and see, as someone mentioned it before, what they can actually add, what they can do to kind of like make it maybe more clearer to people and kind of more engaging as well. Because as any other party or any other group, you have to engage the people. You have to make them excited to what you're doing. You have to make them sure really that what you're doing actually matters and it's going to change their life. Because as they say, they actually would like to change lives by doing this, and to just kind of like make it as well better for us, and what we've got in South Sudan, because that's what we're all aiming for. But to do that, especially in somewhere like South Sudan, is quite difficult because there's so many parties there as well, and nobody trusts anybody else. So that's kind of like earning the trust. Really, I think that's the kind of like the main thing here, to just earn the trust and just make sure that you have the foundation. Your foundation, they're quite stable and they're quite there to kind of like to carry you on. Because if you have your foundation, they're there, and if you have people that actually support you, then you actually be able to do much more than. So in a way, maybe they've kind of like taking kind of us for granted, or maybe it was just a wishful thinking. But it's not wrong. It's fun, because sometimes if you have something, if you kind of like, if you stood kind of like say, oh, maybe I shouldn't do it, then maybe we should, we wouldn't be talking about it now. But maybe then this, from now on, then maybe they would have other ways of kind of try to deal with whatever flaws they have in, in the original idea that they have with them. So yeah, so this is actually what I think, and it's kind of a personal thing, kind of like thinking about it. But I can't prove it, because I know with the theory, you have to prove your theory when you have it. But I just kind of think, I think maybe they need to kind of like just put all the probabilities, and then from there, kind of like work with what they feel is right. Yeah, thank you.
Mabor.
I can't hear
Thank
you.
you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mawan. What I have, what I see as flows of the Pcca are all around what they have announced, their project of protest. I have four major flows that I see. Number one, the demand to derail the peace, change the government middle of transition, was unpopular. Number two, there was lack of integrity in the way they manage the protests, because they were trying to lead it from hiding place. So that is an issue, integrity issue. They should have been leading the people themselves. So number three, there was some equivocal mixed messages that they sent out there. Like at the beginning, they said they were going to organize demonstration and get the government out of the rule. And then later, after the demonstration has been suppressed, they said, we didn't mean it. We meant it only for promotion. So it's like we were kidding you. So that is a mixed messages. That is a flaw. Number four, there are some, as previous speakers pointed out, there are some unrealistic and wishful thinking in their behavior. Against the background of absence of organization or lack of organization, they rely too much on their declaration. They rely too much on spontaneous response of the people without real organization on the ground, which didn't happen. The organization didn't happen. The people did not respond spontaneously as they wished, or maybe they were suppressed by the government. So, and lastly, they were promising. They said in one of their statements, they called to the people. They said, you will be supplied water, what your needs when you are doing the when you are doing the demonstration. But these people, they were addressing people they did not organize. They were addressing people they don't know their whereabouts. So, and also when they say we are going to supply, it raises questions of are there foreigners behind them? Where do they get the money to do that? Or also for them to say, when they said we have supporters within the armed forces, that was alarming, because it means there's going to be violence. They shouldn't have said that, because it alarmed people. So these are some of the few things that I see as their flaws. And the last one is the one that other people have referred to, which is their language is elitist. Their language is too high for the normal people to understand. So that is there's one last thing. What else? Yeah, but I will make my closing remarks with this entry, is that these leaders, they are decent people, they are learned, articulate people, but the timing, or their timing and what they demanded for was the problem. I want to make a note also on the issue of freedom of speech. I am familiar with law. I'm not a practicing lawyer, but I am familiar with law. Even in Australia, Nyadol might know. The principle of freedom of speech has also, there are limits to freedom of speech. If they were we're going to express our displeasure with the government for whatever, that would be within the limit of freedom of speech. But if you say you tell the government to go, we are going to get the government out of the rule, then you are over the limits of the freedom of speech, and you will fall into something called sedition. That is sedition. No government, no laws allow someone to come and take them, chase them away from rule. No one in the world, even in America, if you go, you said you are asking for the government to resign, and you don't have even legal basis. You yourself, you don't have any legal basis to tell the government to resign. Then you are beyond your legal the limits of freedom of speech. So roughly that's what I wanted to add, and thank you very much. And Mawan, next time we also need to, when we say 3 minutes, I am over 3 minutes now. You haven't.
Yeah, we
you haven't asked me.
We're gonna find a way out too. Don't worry.
Yeah, and the last speakers, one of them spoke for 7-9 minutes, another 6. So yeah, so we'll take note of that in our next show.
It's not easy.
So thank you very much. I'll stop here.
Yeah, but that has been a very wonderful discussion. In fact, I have not interfered with this discussion. I have not made any comment, but I'm tempted to make one comment. What you've just said, Mabor, it's not true. I have seen many petitions in this country calling for the government to go, and they said, they're going to campaign in the streets, so the government goes. And people just laugh at them, and the campaign just dies. It's not a crime to say that I'm campaigning for the government to go away. It's not. It's within.
But when you say I have my people in the army, when you say I have supporters in the armed forces,
that is a separate point that you've mentioned.
Yeah, that is a dangerous agitation. Yeah,
it is. Okay, without getting much more into this, what I was going to say is, actually we are concluding now, but I just wanted to say, if you have a point that you feel you've left out, this is the time to say, but please keep it brief. Anyone? Yes, Lem. Thabo, Lem, Jok, did you raise your hand? Jok?
Thank
No,
you.
I didn't. No, I didn't.
Okay. So
I'm
is
going to be
Thabo,
very
Lem,
brave.
anybody else? Nyadol, did you raise your hand?
Emmanuel is there.
No, I don't. Sorry, I don't have any other contribution. Just to thank you for your moderation and for thanks all the panelists for their contribution. It was a very useful debate.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you,
so
Brother Mawan. I'm going to be very brave. Just let me be brave. The point that I'm trying to make, I don't want us to be so abstract and so artificial. When we reference republic, it's better we know what we are talking about. When we are talking something that doesn't relate to you as a people, sometimes the origins matters. I'm somebody who's always epistemological when I look at things. So the things, how we are going to work, I was trying to be realistic. South Sudan, for it to be to really work, it has to remain as a territorial state. That we must respect territorial boundaries, and everybody must be in their territories. This is where Africa has failed, and it is a question of academic, and it has been looked at. For Africa to be really, we talk, of course, of one people. What do we mean by one people and one nation? So I wanted us to look at it differently, such that we don't fall in the same footstep. Everywhere is still struggling, whether they had a good ideologue, like we had somebody so visionary, the same. They will never get it right because they are building a nationhood state, a republic. And this is something aliens. It is not a character of a black man anywhere, whether among the indigenous people of Australia, the original people, it will never work. Whether among the red Indies in America or in North America, it will never work. People worked in the territories. They thrived well in the territories. So let's try to look at it. Let's not import things just because academically it is good, or somehow it works somewhere, it is good. It has never worked. That's why we still have all these social inequities everywhere.
thank you.
So let's South Sudan. When we had 32 states, or how many, I don't remember. This was trying to build that decentralization system, of which only at the territorial state can people work well. Everybody must belong to their territories. Some of our issues cannot be addressed politically, but they can be addressed if the question of land is addressed. And
I think I love your point, and I think that's probably a subject for a major discussion one day as well. And maybe get the panel back. That would be very interesting. So, but yeah, it's appreciated, that point. Tom.
Yeah, thank you. It's just a small little contribution. It's just to say, like, the Pcca is actually not going to be the first, or it's not going to be the last, really, as far as I think, in South Sudan. Because as we know now, it's been 10 years, and in those 10 years, we're still struggling even to kind of like have a meaningful peace for all our people. So what I say, like, to whether leaders or government or in the oppositions, is really they kind of need to have a think and kind of ask themselves, what have they actually done that they're proud of, that have done in South Sudan or to the people of South Sudan? I just want to ask this question, if they can ask it really and answer the question, because I kind of feel like for the whole 10 years, like, there's so many things would have happened, but in those 10 years, we're still talking about the things that we're supposed to be talking about 10 years ago. So I think something needs to change, really. So because of that, Pcca, I don't think it's going to be the last. So there will be others. So they're just going to have to start conversing with our people, really, because I think it's time to converse with everyone rather than trying to suppress people who wants to say what they want to say. Because if it's peaceful, there's no harm in that. That's my opinion, anyway. Thank you. Thank you, Mawan.
Yeah, and that's really a good note to finish this remarkable discussion. A lot of beautiful things have happened on RBC before, but I think this is one of the best things I have experienced, and really appreciation goes to all of you, each and every single one of you, for the contribution that you've made. Yeah, we've touched on many things. We've spoken about that the impact has been great. There had been noticeable impact, at least abroad. People have felt that there has been that the CCP has shaken the system, made the government respond. That's one thing we mentioned. Also, we've mentioned that maybe there are slightly elitists. Maybe it's time to tone down, to use ordinary language, maybe use simple Arabic, maybe use our native languages to reach our people, speak a simple language. Someone has raised a very important point, take the leadership to the people. So we've also mentioned the question of they were too rushed, not everything was thought through, maybe if they campaign long enough, although people have also said maybe they're still learning and they're going to change gear and continue to deliver the message to our people, maybe even give power to the local people so they lead, the revolution, decide when to go into the streets. It should not be a central decision. Otherwise, these leaders of the Pcca are just repeating what our government has done, which is not a place to go. People have spoken. Sahatini has spoken about republic, which slightly actually contradicts slightly what Nyadol was saying. A model that we saw in Australia, we've seen in Switzerland, we've seen around the world, multiculturalism, where people, let's admit it, South Sudan is man-made, but Zande is not man-made. You know, it's a natural process that took thousands of years to become what it is now. And that applies to every ethnic South Sudanese group. These are ancient, some people say God created them. I don't. I think they are just social evolutions, and people carve like a tree carves, but it takes many years to become a shuluk and for the language to develop and to have the values of the mug and things like that, that are not the same things the Dinka believe in, for example, which you must respect. So this is what Nyadol is saying. Yet, we don't want to be just people occupying a space called Sudan, South Sudan. There must be something that unites us along citizenship. But we remain diverse. But as Sahatini says, but not only remains diverse, maybe we can start learning more from each other over time and borrow more from each other to establish our state and our republic. We said a lot of things. We said about how these people, we might criticize them, but they're brave. They did this. They made this decision at a very difficult time, under very, very difficult circumstances, dealing with a group that Lem described as militaristic, maybe even a cabal, a dangerous cabal that would kill, and they have killed so many of our people. They have no qualms, so we must acknowledge and raise our hands up to what they have done, what the Pcca leaders have done. We're talking about that they needed maybe more planning. Mabor mentioned about the lack of integrity. And this is something to do with, if you are a leader, are you going to lead from the front or are you going to lead from behind? We've spoken about so many things, and these are the things that really we enjoy. These are things we want to come out. So our people listen, and hopefully our people also could talk more. And I'm sure they are talking already. But hopefully this is the kind of attitude we want for our people, that we shift from shooting each other, hating each other, fighting each other, to talking and having a discussion with each other, and maybe South Sudan will become what we all want. So I appreciate you all, and this has been wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to make an announcement.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're welcome, Mabor.
Okay, guys. This is a house. This is a broad church, RBC. I want you all, guys. We want to introduce languages, our languages programs. So if anyone from any language background has ideas and does want to present on RBC, they are welcome. They are welcome to contact Mawan or me or Cholok Dut. Just to present, you will be given credentials to log on to RBC channel and do your thing there. So that's one announcement that I wanted to make. We have in mind that there are 6 languages that were agreed upon South Sudan in the Rajab conference.
Oh, the British. This is the legacy.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be what. The only reason it's significant is because it's the best that has ever been achieved regarding our language, and we've fallen so short of that since then. So the idea is to go back to the 6 or 7 more major languages in South Sudan, but that's not where, at least the government, that's not where they should stop. But hopefully we want, through our languages, we reach all our people and we stop being elitist because we speak the language of our people.
Exactly. Yeah.
The dignity.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There you go.
And
Thank you.
Good night. Thanks for your
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
How do we exit?
Leave the studio.
Yep. I got out of the
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mabor.
You're welcome. You're welcome.